Hello world, my name is Lydia Mae Simmons, and I am proud to announce that as of today, I am officially cavity-free. I thought I had like 4 or 5 cavities, but the dentist said no. And she also said that my teeth were, and I quote, gorgeous. So I'm feeling pretty good tonight. I'm coming at you with another production breakdown video, this time for my song Stranger. We're gonna do a little bit of production breakdown, songwriting stories, production advice, and probably a whole bunch of random bullshit that I have not yet planned out because I don't script these videos in advance. So if you like me, please subscribe so you can see me all the time. Thank you. This song comes at the middle of the album. The beginning, first half of the album is about coming into yourself, getting the first glimpses of embodiment and fully present living and what it really means to feel alive. And then at the halfway point of the album, you kind of start remembering why you were living your life in a more numbed out way to begin with, why you were resisting this feeling in the first place, because you start remembering that it's actually, it's kind of difficult and challenging to remain embodied in your experience of life, and all of these systems like capitalism, racism, ableism, homophobia, all these things, they don't want you to be fully present in your life. They benefit from you being disconnected from yourself and discounting the way that you feel. So the first half of the album, you're kind of having this euphoric experience of having your eyes opened and seeing life differently for the first time. And then about halfway through the album, you kind of start coming up on some challenges, and they're really summed up in this song. And then it gets better again after this, but we have a pause here. This song is called Stranger because it's one of the lyrics in the bridge of this song, and it's about feeling like you're a stranger to yourself, feeling like you don't really know who you are. And all of the lyrics are kind of about you looking back at who you were before and thinking like, wow, that was kind of good. Like, I used to love all these things. I used to have a life that worked for me and made sense to me, and now I've made the decision to kind of leave all of that security behind and go and find something new. And why the fuck did I do that? Like, for example, maybe you're thinking, I don't agree with these intersections of capitalism and ableism and treating us like our bodies are only good for making money and producing capital, and instead you're going to center your own experience of your life, your own health and well-being, and not just, lay your body on the line for these systems. And so you choose to kind of maybe pull back and say no to things and approach your life with different priorities to prioritize your own health and your own values. And then you start getting praised less at work. Other people get a promotion instead of you. Maybe you don't get a raise, all of these things. Or maybe it doesn't even have any actual consequences, but people just don't fawn over you anymore and are no longer validating everything that you do. And maybe you get looks from people who don't agree with the choices that you're making, or people who haven't yet liberated themselves. And you start feeling insecure, and you start feeling like, shit, I'm not being productive. Am I useless? Am I lazy? Am I ever going to amount to anything? And all of these, doubts start creeping back into your mind. All of those things that made it hard to live this way in the first place are now coming back, and you realize even though you make a conscious decision to reorient your life and to start living in accordance with your values and live in a more embodied way, that doesn't mean that you've completely gotten rid of these beliefs, because we're born into these systems and our subconsciouses are formed by them for most of us for at least a decade, maybe 2 decades, before we start really waking up to what's going on and start changing our lives and rewiring our minds. So you really don't have a chance at just like making one decision and then everything gets better. It's an ongoing process, and you have to continue choosing and prioritizing these things every single day and reevaluating your own values and your own actions and how they line up every day, instead of thinking that you can change one thing and then automatically it'll become easy. It continues to be a challenge and be very stressful and difficult for possibly ever, but at least for several years. My air conditioning just turned on. Sorry if you're hearing more background noise now. Anyway, that's what this song is about. That moment where you start realizing like, fuck, that's why I was doing that. I have to deal with being misunderstood, or these systems that still exist around me not valuing me as much because I've chosen to not value them. Anyway, I hope that makes sense. I do in fact still have a corporate job, so it's complicated and, it's whatever. There are ways to do this at every stage in life, no matter where you are, and we're all on a journey. So we start with the bass, and then these 2 little sound effects, ambient flutter and garden sanctuary, that are going to usher us into the song. Sounds pretty terrible, doesn't it? Let's listen to these on their own. Yeah, the bass is automated, so it's not there right at the beginning, but eases in. This bass does have kind of a plucky sound to it. You can really hear when it starts. This is meant to imitate an upright bass, so you can hear almost like the string being plucked. So I didn't want it to start off the song with that sound. I wanted it to ease in a little bit at the beginning, but mostly it's those two sound effects that start the song off a little bit and just help it to not be such a stark transition from silence right into the middle of the song. That's always something I'm working on figuring out. Then after that intro, we have some pulsing synths, some pads, and then this underlick, which I always am having in all of my songs, which is a melodic motif that is never sung throughout the course of the songs. And it goes under. Also, I don't know if it's actually an underlick because it doesn't continue throughout the whole song. I don't know. If you watch all these videos back, you'll realize I have never known, still don't know what an underlick actually is, but I heard it once and now I say it a lot. Anyway, this is what you get. So that might be an underlick, or it might just be a synth solo, or maybe it doesn't need to have a name. It's some notes. It has such a nostalgic, melancholic feeling to me. It's very bittersweet, that intro. You can sense that it's sad. It still sounds hopeful and nice, but something's not quite right there. Something's going on, and let's find out what's going on. This little section consists of 4 different synths. First we have Bellephon. Some very washy, reverbed out bells. And then Chelonian sequence? Colonian? I don't know. Also bells, but much brighter, and then it has a little swell at the end that helps keep things interesting as it goes on. Then we have small amped acoustic piano. Pretty self-explanatory. And then distant harp echoes. You may notice on that section, they're all playing the same notes, but on this one, on those pauses in between, I'm not holding the notes down, and I imagine that was because probably distant harp echoes, it probably echoes out a lot, and maybe the sound grew too much or developed into something I didn't like as I held it out, so sometimes I just have to cut the notes shorter because it gets weird as it goes on, and I only need the beginning of the note. And it looks like each of those tracks is duplicated, so they're going to come back later, maybe more prominently. And then these pulsing synths, really kind of the heartbeat of the song. Let's see what that chord progression is. That would be G, B minor, C add 9, G9, sus4, D711, and D. D711. Again, very melancholic feeling to me. The guitar PM acoustic is the main one you're hearing. And then in my head I always call this combed M&Ms, but I know it's just combed M's. Very, very far in the background. Little vocal moment to it. And then we start out with just one pad playing the chords. Obviously, we will get more because I'm addicted to pads and I will never stop using them to an insane degree. I think there was maybe like half of a song on this entire album out of the 9 songs where I didn't really use pads in a major way to play the chords. I don't remember which song it is. There's one song in this album that doesn't really rely very heavily on chords, although there still are some, and I did use some pads, but normally I have them really as a base of the song that goes through almost the whole thing, and I'm always so proud of myself whenever I can figure out a way to build a song that is interesting and melodic without them, because they're so easy. But I'm learning. I'm I'm getting better. There are pads everywhere, always. It's just, you find any good chord progression, you find one good pad. I could just listen to that all day on loop. I don't need a more interesting song. Anyways, this is what we start out with. Those chords are just G, C add 9, D7. Had a lot of extra notes added in the synth stabs portion, but on the pads, the chords are more simple. This is a chord progression that once again feels quite melancholic, but you may notice they're all major chords. That would be a classic 1-4-5 chord progression. So no minor chords, nothing to make it stereotypically sound a little bit sad and a little bit interesting, but you're still getting that kind of a feeling. So I couldn't really tell you why, but maybe it's because of the instruments that I chose. Or maybe it's all in my head, which is always possible. Okay, what else do we have? We also have, as always, sound effects, making it to sound of wind. Nothing too crazy there. That's just for me. Okay, and then the cheap upright bass. Let's talk about it now. Very simple bass. Nothing to write home about. That's an Alchemy muted 2 presets, and I noted it's best in octave 3, which is where I played it. Once again, I've mentioned this in previous videos, but if you're using synth basses and you're using it in 1 octave and thinking, this sounds like trash, why would anybody ever use it? I can barely even hear the notes. Try going up some octaves or down some octaves, because it heavily transforms the way that bass will sound. So most of the time, octave 2 is a safe bet for bass, and then sometimes certain ones will sound really good even lower in octave 1, but sometimes you gotta go higher. And usually I find for basses that are meant to sound more natural, like an actual bass, sometimes you have to go higher than with a pure synth bass. Anyways, so that's what we begin with. We just have some pads, some synth stabs, a little underlick, if it can be called that. The jury's still out, and some sound effects. And then we get into the vocals, and I will let you just listen to it, because you'll kind of start to hear with the lyrics what the deal is with this song. Girl I used to love, rooms I just walk into, visions that I thought I knew by heart. I can't find them anymore. I never thought I'd need a key for that door. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know where I'm going. Been a while since I listened to this song, and wow, how beautiful is that? Okay, something that I'll continue to talk about throughout the course of this is how I'm really proud of these backing vocals. I think I really did something with these harmonies. But first, we'll talk about the main vocals. As I tend to do, they are very airy and heavily reverbed. I feel like the space worked out really well on these. There was a girl I used to love. One thing to note, you will see here I have this chopped out, and I know I did do some gain. Yeah, so I have that little part on both the main vocal track and the one where I have all my reverb effects gained up 16 decibels, which if you don't know, that is quite a lot, because somehow in the treating of my vocals where I go in afterwards and take out all of those clicks and pops and mouth sounds and whatever, I ended up accidentally, the lyrics are, there was a girl I used to love. I ended up somehow taking out so it just makes it sound like there was girl I used to love, which it doesn't make any sense. So there was still a sliver of that left where you could kind of hear it, but it was more a breath than anything. So I wanted it to kind of be there. So I chopped out the word and took it up a ton, and you still can't hear it. You really, really can't. And I originally took it up more and then I had to take it back down because it was very obvious. It was bringing up the background noise with it way too much. And so it became very obvious that there was like this weird surge of white noise, and then it went back away. So you win some, you lose some. That is what it is. And sorry to get anybody's hopes up about any salacious details about my personal life, but the girl I used to love is in fact myself. So these lyrics are just talking about I used to love myself. I made all these decisions for my life. There were things that I was really excited about, and I thought I knew the path that I was going on. And now I've made all of these decisions to change the course of my life. And now I'm standing here like, where am I even going? Was that really so bad back there? Yes. But sometimes you just don't know. We have the effects on our vocals. I will just show you, I don't think I've ever actually done this, show you what it sounds like with none of this stuff on it. There was a girl I used to love, rooms I chose to walk into, visions that I thought I knew by heart. As I always say, this is a bounced version of the actual audio track on which I recorded these vocals. So originally I would have EQ and mild de-essing and compression on that track, and then I bounce it. So you don't see any compression here, but these vocals are compressed. Let me just see so what I had originally would have been auto-tune, channel EQ, just taking out the lows, compression at threshold of -45 dB, ratio of 5.8 to 1, and pretty mild attack and release, so just a little bit of compression, not very much. And then the gain turned up a little bit because I record these vocals at a pretty low monitoring level, so I have to turn them up sometimes. In between this, I will go into RX Elements, which is the software that I use to remove all of those imperfections and weird noises from my vocals. I will also do a voice denoise, which takes out a lot of the background noise that is created by the fact that I record at home in my room. So that's also kind of a form of EQ, but not really, it's just to take out background noise. To add in some freshness from all of those cuts and possible muffling that has been added, I add back in Slate Digital's Fresh Air, which is a free plugin. Visions that I thought I knew by heart. Visions that I thought I knew by heart. So it just makes the vocal sound a little bit more clear and crisp. And then channel EQ once again, just to cut off the lows again, anything that might have been coming out, and just to take a little bit off of the low mids. I think probably if I was recording this now, I would have taken more off, but that's what I have for now. Visions that I thought I knew by heart. Very subtle. And then the Clevgran degrader, which is some saturation and distortion, and that is going to be only at the end. So that is only there to add some saturation and distortion to certain words and phrases so they stand out more, but isn't being used throughout the rest of the song. And then on the other vocal track, which is, I call it my wet vocals, obviously both of them have effects on them, but this has the majority of the reverb. So I also have Fresh Air, channel EQ once again. This one is doing some more heavy cuts in the low mid area. And then Space Designer, Dream Hall. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know I use this one all the time. And then Tape Delay, adding some extra delay, and then TDR Nova, which will be doing some dynamic de-essing for me. And so the wet vocals sound like this. Visions that I knew by. Very far in the background. Lots of reverb, but together. Visions that I thought I knew by. I also have on that bus, treating both of them together, I do have... Also, does anybody know in Logic how to control when you open a plugin where on your screen it pops up? Because I get into these periods of time where every time I open up a plugin, they all open in like the bottom right screen super far away and I have to drag them back to the center of the screen. What gives? I don't know how to change that. It drives me crazy. Anyways, doing even more de-essing because I just have to go kind of crazy on that. And then this will be doing also on those low mids that I was talking about. We'll be doing some dynamic EQ on them. I used to love rooms I just walk into, visions that I thought I knew by heart. So you can see it's mostly doing de-essing. It's not hardly doing very much with those two bands in the middle, but that's what it's for. And then once again, cutting off a little more of the lows and then boosting a little bit around 2K, which will just add a little bit of brightness and presence to the vocals. Those will stay mostly the same. And then our effects will be a little bit different. On the backing vocals, I use more reverb because I just want everything to feel a little bit more dreamy and space-like in the backing vocals, but ultimately not too many effects. Channel EQ, there's a lot more going on with the EQ. Around 200 to 300 hertz I usually have to take out on pretty much every other track on my songs except for the main vocal, because that is where the fundamental frequency of my vocals sits. And so if you have too much going on with other instruments and other tracks in the song, it just takes away from the clarity of the vocal and you'll keep feeling like you have to bump up the volume, but what you really need to do is just make some space in the EQ spectrum for it. So obviously these are still a form of vocal, but I don't want them competing in any way with the main vocal. So I'll always take out a little bit around that portion of the frequency spectrum and then a lot in the low mids because I don't want them to get super muddy or boomy or feel like really overwhelming and in your face. And then a little bit around 1K, which will make them a little less clear and a little more washy, which is what I want. And then boosting a little higher around 3K, which will add some silveriness and some brightness, and then boosting a lot from 10K up, which adds just a lot of air. And it's a less audible change, but it just really lifts them up. And then Space Designer will once again be Dream Hall. And then on the pedal board, I have just basically a delay plugin, but it also adds some flutter, some dirt, some noise, some extra grit and grunge to it. So we start off with just, I'm sure it's just some oohs and ahs. Not some oohs and ahs, actual harmonies. Again, in this song I did do a lot with the harmonies, so something was just working for me on the day that I recorded these. Let's just listen through and see what we got on the harmony tracks. What is there to say? Sounds very beautiful to me, if I do say so myself. We have in the first chorus some more pads / piano that get added. I really love that swell where I automated them to come in for the post-chorus. Feels very angelic and beautiful. Again, that's just some simple gain automation. Nothing too crazy going on there. And then obviously, again, as I'm sure you heard, we repeated that underlick in the post-chorus. Distant harp echoes originally was just playing the notes, and now I have added some chords to it. Don't really recall why I did that, but I'm sure it was just for some extra texture and because I love chords. And listen, when people say that music to them is primarily about the lyrics or primarily about the feeling and that they don't really care about the notes, I literally want to shoot myself in the face. Am I allowed to say that on YouTube? I don't know. But man, there's nothing like a good chord progression. And I hate songs where it feels like the chord progression is an afterthought. I just wanna bathe in a good chord progression and just sit there and listen to it all day long. All day long. Anyways, we do add some to the bass additionally once the chorus comes in. It's a little bit more of an interesting bass pattern that will continue throughout the rest of the song. Notes are G, B, G, C, A, D, D. ADD. I think they call it ADHD now. Anyways, that just makes it feel like it moves a little bit more and you're not sitting on the same note the whole time. It is a little bit subtle. They're definitely quieter than the main bass, but it's interesting. And I do have these two sounds that also transition into the post-chorus. Love, 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 love. Going into the second verse, we had those pads in the piano that were playing in the first chorus. Those will go back out, but the change in the bass will remain and everything else will stay pretty much the same, but we will add and add and add and add more to the harmonies. So let's take a listen. That's the song. I really like the lyrics in verse 2. It said, and how can I forget the one who stole it all from me, the one who chose to tear it all apart. I didn't mean to start down such a dark and lonely path. But I heard the call, I followed myself into the fog. Those lyrics took a long time to come up with, but I really feel like they summed it up. Again, I'm talking about myself. I'm the one who chose to take it all for me. This part of the song almost feels like you're sleepwalking and then you wake up and you realize you're in a pond standing there and you're, how the hell did I get here? And you're very disillusioned. This kind of feels like you've been living in a dream up until this point and now you're like, what the fuck? I blew up my whole life for this vision and for these new feelings that I was having. And yes, because they weren't just dreams and visions, they were important, but it kind of feels like that moment where you're like, oh my God, was this realistic? Also, I can see my neighbor's truck out here, and I'm seeing part of the undercarriage of their truck really right now looks to me like a human foot in a boot. So I'm distracted. God help me. Anyways, it's not a human foot. I have OCD. It's fine. So this part of the song is just feeling mad at yourself, frustrated with yourself, feeling like you don't know what the hell you did, but ultimately it will be worth it. If you listen to the rest of the album, this is just part of the journey. It's necessary to not get freaked out at this point in the journey and turn everything around, not discount what brought you to that point, but to process your feelings and continue moving forward. Thank you. Things pretty much stay the same for the first half of the second verse, but then when you get to the part, but I heard the call, then you kind of get more that comes in. You get more as far as the harmonies. They're very beautiful in that section, I do believe. But I heard the call. I followed myself to the fall. Very choral. But I heard the call. 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 So you'll notice on that line, they all start, but I heard they're all singing the same notes. And then when it gets to call, they kind of diverge. So I did want it to feel like they were kind of together and then they spread apart with that swelling feeling. The other thing that changes at that moment is we get these two basses that then come in and really up the intensity by 100. And all together with the harmonies, it sounds like this. But I heard the call. I followed myself to the fall. Very, very cool, very, very dramatic. We also add in 2 new pads. Well, 1 new pad, and then we're bringing back this piano that was happening in the first post-chorus. Again, just such I was really killing it with the automation here. Such beautiful swells. It just feels so evocative and emotional. And I won't go over this too much because I've talked about it at great length. I've beat this horse to death and back to death again in other videos, but 99% of the synthesizers and sounds that I get from my songs are from Logic Pro's synth library Alchemy. Tons and tons and tons of great presets. Highly recommend if you use Logic that you go in there and categorize them and make yourself a customized library, because really I have found as of yet I don't need anything else. So that's where all of these sounds are from. I won't go over it too much, but if you are producing music, go check it out. Also aiding our transition into the second half of the second verse, we have some sound effects and everybody go, what? Subtle little sound effects I use all the time. You may hear, if you're reading about production or watching production tutorials, technically these are functioning as risers. That's what you will hear a lot. Those sounds where it kind of sounds like meow. A riser is a sound that starts off quiet and gets loud, and it comes in to such a gradual degree that when the sound starts, your ear doesn't register it, but you just slowly kind of feel that energy swelling. So you start to feel the sound before you're hearing it, so it's not distracting to the listener like a new sound just coming right in. When you use risers or you use volume automation to have certain pads that are existing for a little bit and then slowly they grow up. There's sound effects that have slow attack, and so they come in kind of slowly. All of those things together are what you really want to make transitions sound natural and to help you move from one part of the song to another that may sound very different or may have very different energy, but you want it to not feel like a jarring transition where all of a sudden you're just like, and everything's different and you're very caught off guard. In a million different ways, all throughout the stereo field, on all different frequency levels, to help just kind of, on almost a subconscious level, indicate to the listener that, okay, something's coming, and then you're not so surprised when, like, a big bass sound comes in because you were kind of getting those cues. You were kind of gently easing them into it and letting them dip their toe in the water and get used to the temperature briefly before things changed. So, lots of different stuff, and there's no rhyme or reason to how I come up with that. These are all, once again, going to be alchemy presets and just little sound effects that I like, that sound like wind, that sound like bird song, that sound like just an airy pad or whatever, and you bring in a lot of them. They're not being automated from quiet to loud as they come in. These just all have slow attack, which means they naturally do their own kind of volume automation as they come in. They're not going to start at their full loudness. There are technical sound effects that are called risers that will be used, but then you can create the psychological effect that you're looking for via sounds that you may like more than traditional risers, because a lot of the times they'll sound good in like EDM and electronic music, but may not sound natural in the type of music that you are trying to make. So that's a pro tip for you. And then we'll have another transition in energy going into the bridge because the energy goes down a lot. This is, I think, my favorite bridge off the whole song. I think this is the first part of the song that I wrote, and then I added the rest of it after it. So we have those basses that came in to up that energy. They're going to go back away. Bye-bye. And then we do cut down on the backing vocals is the main other thing that changes. They were really swelling and filling up that stereo field, and now we're going to bring them back down to make things quieter. And let's also see if I have any gain automation going on. Yeah, so those pulsing synths that are going throughout the whole song, I also just took them down several decibels during that section, and that looks like pretty much all that changed. But you do feel that difference in the energy going in here, and I do have, once again, those sound effects. They can transition you up and they can transition you down out of energy. So it's not only when the energy is rising up, but it can also help when you're going to drop things, like you have these main pads and synths and bass sounds that are going throughout the whole song, and your ear becomes accustomed to hearing them, and when they drop out, it can really feel like the energy just gets sucked out of the room, which can be good if you're actually going for that effect. But if you just want a part of the song to become quieter and for it to feel gentle, sound effects that ring out can be really good for that. You don't want to just like line everything up perfectly to the markers where you just, you play your 4 chords and then the pads just go away. You maybe want to play your 4 chords and then you play the first one again and have that automated, like the reverb goes up. I don't know if this is making any sense. Let me see if I did it anywhere. So on this one, I have the gain just automated to gradually go out. So here when it stops, it's not just going to drop off. It's going to gradually go away so your ear feels that's a more natural transition. And then on this one, I have within Alchemy, there's a reverb built into this preset. I have that going up. So it was starting at 50% wet reverb and I took it up to 100%. And then maybe did I have anything else? And I had the gain automated taking it down. So that's usually what I do is I'll automate the gain to be going down as the reverb's going up. So this sound, this original signal is getting quieter, but you're still hearing it kind of ring out slowly. So that helps to avoid that feeling of a sound just dropping out. It's going to just kind of blow away into the wind. So that can be very helpful a lot of the time. Instead of stopping the loops of my pads and bass evenly right at the beginning of the new section, I'll have them overlap a little bit and go away slowly so that you have a more natural transition from one section to the other. That transition altogether sounds like this. And the backing vocals always do help a lot with those transitions as well, when you have a little oohs and ahs that begin at the end of one section and continue into the new section. Ad-libs and things like that are really easy for the ear to catch on to, so it helps the listener kind of be distracted, like, ooh, that's nice, and then, oh, whoa, I'm in a different place now. It doesn't feel as jarring. And if you're recording those, you want to make sure to hold that note for as long as you can, and also you can do the same tricks, automating the reverb and automating the gain for it to fade out a little bit, but you want it to definitely overlap those two sections significantly so that you usher the listener into it and they have more time to adjust to the new energy, and they feel that you're there with them and you haven't left them alone. But the other major thing that changes in this bridge is underneath the vocals, I have this little synthesizer doing a little something. I don't even know, this is just a random pattern that I came up with because I felt like I needed something. That can't even be called a synth pattern because it's not a pattern. None of it repeats. It's just it's not even a solo because I'm singing over it. I don't fucking know. It's notes. Don't worry about it. Jesus Christ. Sometimes by the way I talk in these videos, you can really tell I have autism and OCD. There's some things that is wrong with my brain. Anyway, then obviously in the outro, we repeat this little motif again. And I also have, as promised, duplicates of these 4 synth tracks that are now playing a different pattern at the end. And these are going to be layered with the backing vocals. Just a little something nice and new at the end. I don't know. Not too much to say about there. We do at the end finally have all of those pads and pianos coming together, and they sound like this. The backing vocals and harmonies do stay pretty simple through the end because I didn't want the energy to really come back up. I wanted it to feel very gentle, but we do bring back this death ray bass. Really unreasonably dramatic and intense for the type of song that we're doing here, but this brings me to another point that I haven't talked about yet, but that I do believe is one of the most important things to know as a music producer, which is that producing is like cooking or baking. Sometimes, say you have a chocolate cake and you want the chocolate to be 10 times more intense than what you currently have. Your first instinct would be to add more and more and more and more chocolate. But oftentimes, the best thing to do is to add something that is maybe a completely different flavor, such as coffee, such as adding salt, adding different things like that that are totally, they're completely different, but it enhances the flavor of that thing in a much more subtle and enjoyable way, and in a way that is not going to overload the cake recipe and make it uncookable because there's only so much chocolate you can put in there. Same thing with music production. If you want a song to sound really dark and really intense, oftentimes what you need, instead of layering 10 basses is you need a lot of very high-pitched, airy sounds, because when you give the ear contrast to hang on to, it enhances and emphasizes the sound that you really want the listener to hear. Whereas if you just continue adding more and more of the sound that you want them to hear, or upping the gain or the volume on it, or adding more saturation and more compression and changing the EQ and everything, sometimes what you can do is you just create a sound that is hugely overwhelming and unpleasant to listen to. It just gets loud, you're going to have tons of mixing and mastering issues, and it's still going to sound like a very amateur sound. A lot of the time, if you really want the bass to super stand out, instead of doing more to it, you need to add something that is the opposite of it. And similarly, if you want a song that sounds very airy and very delicate, oftentimes you still are going to need bass. You are going to need low sounds, and sometimes in the most delicate and gentle part of your song, you will want a sound that is really dramatic and big, because it can actually, if used well and thoughtfully, it really enhances the way that it sounds. So keep that in mind. That is something that I learn all the time. Sometimes when you're EQing, you don't need to keep taking out the part of the frequency spectrum that's bothering you. You just need to boost somewhere else. Like, you just gotta be thoughtful about this and think, where do I need some contrast? Where am I going too heavy with this and I need to bring something else in to balance it out? And let the ear do its job instead of needing to do everything in the computer and needing to just boost that signal over and over again. Think scientifically about it, if you know what I mean. Anyways, the wind does continue throughout the entire song. Very subtle, probably not necessary, but I do adore it. And then honestly, y'all, that is pretty much all that I have to share with you today. Again, the album does pick back up in a more nuanced and thoughtful, but still ultimately very hopeful direction after this song. I encourage you to listen to the whole album, please. It's called The Pulse of Life. It's out everywhere, wherever you listen to your music, except for Bandcamp, because I still need to set that up. Because DistroKid didn't want to do it for me, and I just found that out. Whatever. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I will have a couple more coming for you soon for the remaining songs on this album. I already have 6 videos out for other production breakdowns of the songs on this album, and then after that, who knows? But I do love making YouTube videos for you and talking to you, so please let me know if you have any questions, if you have anything you want to discuss, or if you just want to tell me how beautiful and gorgeous my teeth are. Bye!